the December 6, 2023 meeting of the Montgomery Historic Preservation Commission, Montgomery County Historic Preservation Commission. My name is Bob Sutton. I'm the chair, and I would like for members of the commission to introduce themselves, starting on my left, and for staff to introduce themselves as well.
This is Commissioner Doman.
Michael Galway.
Karen Burdett.
Cristina Arado.
Julie Pelletier.
Mark Dominiani.
John Lieber's Historic Preservation staff.
And we have one who is here remote. If you could introduce yourself. Could she hear?
Zara Nasser.
Oh, thank you. Commissioner Nasser is remote tonight. The first item on our agenda is historic area work permits. Have the work permits been advertised?
Yes, Mr. Chair. This is Rebecca Ballo, Historic Preservation staff for the record. The work permits were advertised in the November 22nd edition of the Washington Times.
Thank you. If there's anyone here to testify for any of these cases, please give a speaker form to staff, and they will let you know that you'll let us know that you are here. So if there's anyone who intends to speak in opposition to any of the cases that we're hearing tonight, please let us know. So the first item on our agenda, the first case that we will hear tonight, is case number 1A, which is deferred from November 15th at 5 Columbia Avenue, Tacoma Park. And is there a staff report on this project?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Again, Rebecca Ballo for the record. I'll be presenting the staff report this evening as Dan Bruckert is out. So thank you, members of the commission. This is Historic Area Work Permit number 1047167 at 5 Columbia Avenue, Tacoma Park. It is an application for a new fence. The subject property is a contributing resource to the Tacoma Park Historic District, constructed circa 1886. The relevant guidelines for review are the Tacoma Park Historic District Design Guidelines, Chapter 24A, and the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. The proposal tonight, the applicants propose to enclose the rear and front yards of their property with a 6-foot-tall board-on-board privacy fence. This is the location showing an existing fence over on the northern side of the property. And then this is a portion of the front yard. Again, this is a corner lot, so there are 2 front yards. And then just moving around the property. So the HPC approved a historic area work permit in 2019 to demolish 2 non-historic additions and construct a rear addition and a side screened-in porch. The HPC approved a solar array comprised of 24 solar panels that same year. And in September 2023, the HPC approved an expansion of the existing solar array. So the staff findings and recommendations: the HPC typically requires fences forward of the rear wall plane to be no more than 48 inches tall. This is done to preserve and respect the environmental setting, landscape, and patterns of open space as required in the Tacoma Park Design Guidelines. The HPC treats most corner lots as having 2 fronts to avoid the sense of creating a wall along the right-of-way. Staff finds that even though the proposed fence along Pine Avenue is pulled away from the sidewalk, that the fence will disrupt the patterns of open space and the district's park-like setting as proposed. Staff recommends the HPC approve the HOP with 2 conditions: that the section of fence that runs along Columbia Avenue be no taller than 48 inches, that's the small portion here, and that the section of fence between the south property line and the house along Pine Avenue shall also be no taller than 48 inches. The case was deferred from the November hearing, and the applicant prepared a response for the commissioners to consider. In response to the staff report, the applicant submitted written testimony that was attached to the application in your board book, identifying 4 factors for the HPC's consideration. These factors are the proximity of other tall fences at corner lots in the surrounding area, the existence of a 6-foot-tall fence along Columbia Avenue, the natural screening created by existing plantings along Pine Avenue, and then finally safety concerns along Pine Avenue. In looking at these factors, staff acknowledges that there are several instances of non-conforming fences, but staff would remind the HPC that all HOPs are evaluated on a case-by-case basis. Staff also recognizes that the existing fence along Columbia Avenue is taller than typically approved, but a fence has been in that location since at least 2003, and the existing fence may predate the district. And in fact, many of the fences that are 6 feet tall or higher in some of these areas, many of them may predate the district, and we just don't have a lot of the permit information about when some of those earlier fences were installed. So the HPC is charged with evaluating hops in the absence of vegetation, and while the screening will help obscure the fence, the HPC is not permitted to consider that factor in the hop evaluation. Finally, in terms of safety, staff does not find that the identified safety considerations satisfy 24A8B4, that the proposal is necessary in order that unsafe conditions or health hazards be remedied. When we look at unsafe conditions or health hazards, it typically has to do with very steep ravines or topography or the adjacency of other industrial or sort of noxious uses. And that concludes the staff presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for staff? Commissioner Burdett?
Regarding other, so we're talking about a 6-foot-tall wooden fence with some attractive appearance, so it's not just a plain old board fence.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as other types of fencing material, I'm thinking specifically of like the deer fencing that gets put up, or the people put up, or it's more like netting, I guess, some of it.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be allowed to go that tall behind a 48-inch fence, or is that also not permitted since it's pretty transparent?
The few instances of deer fencing and that kind of mesh fencing that the HPC has approved in recent years that I am remembering just off the top of my head, some of those were in Garrett Park, and those were in the rear. These were interior lots, and they were on the rear of interior lots. Now, I remember one of them, it was on the side yard, so you would see it kind of dead on from the street, but it was a significant distance from the street for that one. I think we were talking at least 50, 60 feet off the street. I could certainly research that. If the commission were interested, the staff could research that more.
Yeah.
And typically for some of these cases as well, the HPC has made recommendations about plantings to obtain the type of privacy or screening that people want, or more open metal picket fences in coordination with plantings. We've only looked at a very few deer fences, though.
Yeah. Well, I recall the property in Chevy Chase, that it was a deer fencing to encase a garden to a height that someone could walk underneath it. And that was very visible. And now it's long enough ago, I forget what we did with that, but that was the one that came to my mind. Well, the applicant has netting up now, sports netting. Is that allowed?
As long as it's not, we don't treat things like furniture as an alteration. So a lot of patio furniture, or if people have, basketball hoops up or soccer nets or things like that, and as long as they come down within 30 days, or it's not permanently affixed to another structure, in order to keep it up, then we don't consider that an alteration requiring a hop. But if it is on a post that is somehow like tethered into the ground or tethered to the house and is meant to stay up for more than 30 days, then that does require the hop.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, thank you. I have, I believe the owner, Sam Bryson. If you could come forward, please, and sit here at the table and turn on your microphone. If you push the button on it, the light will turn. And if you could give us your name, and if you have several options. If you'd like to do a presentation, you'd have 7 minutes to do a presentation, or if you'd prefer answering questions or both, that is fine as well. So, Mr. Bryson, please.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Can everyone hear me? I'm Sam Bryson, owner, 5 Columbia Avenue. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony, and thank you to the commissioners and to the staff for all of the work that you've done with us as we've rehabilitated this property over the last 4 years. The subject of my testimony is sort of a reinforcement of what I put in my letter, which sounds like has been considered, so I'll be brief. But what I've got here, and hopefully everybody can see what I'm seeing, just a review of the nearby properties with the red stars, also within the historic district in Tacoma Park, where there is a corner lot and the second front yard, or what I would consider the backyard or the yard to the rear of the house, has been enclosed with a fence that is not quite in compliance with the strict guidelines, and sort of similar to what we're proposing here. And so, as I wrote on this slide, my contention and our contention is just that on other corner lots, there's been some flexibility afforded to the strict guidelines, and that the fences that are in place are in some cases closer to the property line and of an even less transparent design than ours. And so I would ask that that be considered and that we be granted a similar degree of flexibility to these other homeowners. So I'll just quickly review visually what those are. If I can move, yes, okay, so this is immediately across from us at 7105 Carroll Avenue, also a contributing resource within the district. And this is, as you can see, a portion of their fence enclosing their backyard, which exceeds 6 feet in height and is solid wood. And the next example is just across the street from them at 104 Park Avenue, an outstanding resource in the district. The front to the left is open, but the rear of the house is enclosed by a 6-foot solid board fence right up at the property line. Third is another contributing resource, 222 Park Avenue, similar solid board fence, not quite on the property line, but certainly closer to the property line than our proposed setback. Fourth, 49 Elm Avenue, a similar design to ours without the lattice on top. But again, this is a corner lot, Elm and Westmoreland Avenue, with a fence directly on the property line. Fifth, I'll skip over, this doesn't appear to be a contributing resource to the district in my research. This is a non-contributing resource, so probably different guidelines than would apply to our case. But sixth, 7200 Carroll Avenue, also a contributing resource there with a solid wood or potentially white plastic fence enclosing the portion of the yard at the rear of the house. So, as I said, I understand from Rebecca's presentation that some of this has already been considered, but I just wanted the opportunity to reinforce what we're seeing in the district and again request that we be afforded the same kind of flexibility. So that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Bryson? Commissioner Doman?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Doman. On the drawing, I guess it's on the left side of your house is a short section and 10 feet long, and that fence currently is 6 feet, is that correct?
That's correct.
And the long length that shows on the diagram that's 86 feet long, that's also a fence that's 6 feet tall?
Is the
This?
In this drawing here, on this one.
that drawing? So excuse me. The only existing fence in place is the short 10-foot section that faces Columbia Avenue. The rest of the fence is non-existent.
Oh. So there is no fence on that side as this drawing shows. This is a proposal then?
That is a proposal. That's correct.
And the same is true for the back of the property too? There's no fence back there either?
There is a small, I think it's in the staff report. It does not have a picture of it, but the staff report did outline maybe a 10-foot section of what appears to be 3.5 or 4 foot tall fence at the south, anyway, in the back corner of the property farthest away from the street.
Is there any reason this little 10-foot section in the front needs to be 6 feet tall? I mean, the other one, you had some reason because of kids playing sports and maybe kicking the ball. But this little section up here, there's no real reason it can't be 10 feet, is it? Or 4 feet?
Other than just aesthetic consistency, I suppose, no.
Yeah. Okay, and on the other side, which I guess faces, what street runs along here?
That's
Pine?
Pine Avenue.
Pine Avenue. Currently, you have a net that goes up, is that what you use, something like that?
Yes.
The kids are practicing kicking soccer goals, something like that.
Yep.
So you need a pretty good fence, I
think
presume?
The net is tall and covers that one area, immediately abutting Pine Avenue. And then what happens, our cars are parked in the driveway and things sort of slide through that other remaining area. But yes, the fence is good, the net's quite tall.
Could you, I mean, the recommendation from staff is 4 feet. Could you work with 4 feet with a temporary net that sits on top of it? Something that you could work with to get the height that you want to prevent balls from being kicked into the street?
I understand the spirit of the question, and I think our main objection is just what would that look like aesthetically from the street to have the two different heights that you would see. So if you were walking down Pine Avenue, you'd see a short 4-foot fence design, and then immediately behind it, when you would be able to see that higher elevation. I also think, which is a secondary concern, but I've seen a lot of 4-foot picket fences, but I've not seen a lot of 4-foot board-on-board fences with a foot of lattice on top, and I think it might look a little awkward. But that's just a subjective thing.
Thank you. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. I will open the floor for discussion of this project. Anyone like to start off? Commissioner Burdett?
Well, we're happy to see you again, and we've always appreciated that you've come before us for all the different things for your house, because I remember when you were first starting to work on it, and it was in a state, and so it's nice to see it now in such good condition. So I'm sure staff told you this, but some of the fences probably predate, well, they predate us. And whether or not a previous commission allowed it or not, we have to stick to the regs. And we also, there's an awful lot of work that gets done that we don't hear about until it comes up as a retroactive later, which also could be some of the explanations for these other fences. I appreciate the issues you're having with your kids, soccer balls, and a 4-foot fence. Now, I would say that, as Commissioner Doman pointed out, is that short fence, or the short section that's up near the front of your house, near the entry. Unless they're kicking long shots down that side, I don't see why that shouldn't be 48 inches, even coming up next to a 6-foot fence. And if you are concerned about aesthetics, you might consider wrapping the 4-foot around a little bit further and then taking it up at the edge of your neighbor's house, basically front plane. But I must say that back along Pine Avenue, that's getting the brunt of the play, I'm having a hard time with a 6-foot fence. And even it's a nice-looking fence, because I have something very similar in my backyard, which is not a historic district at all. But, we have these regulations, and we have them for a reason, and we do have to stick with them. And there are alternatives. They may not be great alternatives, but you do have other options, like some netting on posts, obviously not permanent posts, behind the fence rising up to catch the errant balls. And I think that's something you should consider, because I think everybody understands what's going on. They're going to see a 48-inch fence, and they're going to see the netting behind it, and they're going to hear the kids or see the pinball machine on the front porch, and know that this is a place where kids play, and yes, we are trying to keep the soccer balls and the baseballs from hitting the cars and even your parked cars in your driveway. So I would suggest you consider putting in the 4-foot fence and then putting some netting behind it that can be shown that it would be easy to pull down every 30 days if you have to. But otherwise, it can stay up there, and that the posts are not permanently embedded in concrete in the ground. But that would be my recommendation for you.
Anyone else? Commissioner Doman, did you want to?
I just want to agree. I think I kind of stated it already, that I felt that the four-foot fence was pretty much appropriate. And I really think there's other workarounds that you can use. As Commissioner Burdette said, a temporary net or a fence that you can put up, I think would solve your problem and still stay within our guidelines. So thank you for coming, though.
I want to make sure Commissioner Nassers, we're not forgetting you. So if you have anything you'd like to add, that would be fine. If not, that's fine too. But anybody else, would anybody else like to make an issue here? Okay. Oh, Commissioner Radu.
I agree that, well, for me personally, I mean, I think beyond the guidelines that specified 4 feet, I think it's just the section that is like very close on Pine Street, very close to the street is more critical than this other one, because this other one, I think if it's just few feet behind the house and it's still like a bigger distance, I might be able to live with that. But I think here, this section is like real close to the street.
This is Commissioner Burdette. I make a motion that we approve HOP number 1047167 at 5 Columbia Avenue, Tacoma Park, in the Tacoma Park Historic District, based on the staff reports in front of us and including the conditions in the staff report.
Is there a second?
It's Commissioner Doman, I'll second that.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you. And thank you for coming before us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, the next item we will hear is project number 1B at 19,000 Muncaster Road in Durwood, which is a retroactive HOP. And is there a staff report?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is Rebecca Ballo for the record, and I'll be presenting the staff report. So we have this evening for the HPC's consideration the retroactive HOP number 1048102 at the Master Plan Historic Site, The Ridge, MIHP number 2215 at 19,000 Muncaster Road in Durwood. So The Ridge is a federal-style house constructed circa 1748 with several later additions. The property contains several outbuildings, including a circa 1860 log smokehouse and several other non-historic structures. The remaining environmental setting is 6.83 acres from what was historically a 1,000-acre plantation. The Ridge was the home of Revolutionary War Colonel Zadok Magruder and his descendants. The applicant proposes to enclose a riding arena in front of the house with a 4-foot-tall paddock-style wood fence, 6 20-foot-tall wood light poles with LED light fixtures on each of the poles. This proposal is to be reviewed under Chapter 24A and the Secretary of the Interior's standards for rehabilitation. So here you can see circled in yellow the light poles that have been installed already. From what staff can see, the LED light fixtures themselves have not been installed. Staff would remind the commission that even though this portion of the case is retroactive, the commission is to review the proposal as if no work has taken place. So staff finds that the proposal, as outlined in the application, is consistent with the zoning requirement for equestrian facilities. So this is about the lighting. Specifically, within the applicant's within his presentation materials, he noted that they would be complying with the zoning prohibitions that the lights are not to be turned on after 9 p.m. on Sunday through Thursday and after 10 p.m. on Friday and Saturday, and that the light must direct downward so that 0.0 foot candles are measured at the property line. So those are the lumens. That's the lumen measurement. In terms of the riding arena itself, from what we can tell, staff finds that a riding arena was installed at the property in the approximate dimensions proposed in this HOP between 1986 and 1993. We don't have any permit records for that, but it has been in place for at least several decades from what we could tell from the aerial photographs. At a November 8th site visit, staff observed again that the light poles had been installed, but staff finds that the wooden light poles do not detract from the character of the site, and they may be removed in the future without permanently damaging the character of the property. You know, one of the reasons we circled them here in yellow is that it is a little hard to see them there, set very, very far back from the road. But even their location between the road and the historic house itself, they do not interrupt in any way the view shed towards the historic building or the views of the landscape. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I went a little too far. So again, and then staff finds that the proposed lights, the LED light fixtures themselves, are so small that they also will not detract from the character of the site, and they may also be removed in the future without impacting the site's historic character. Staff finds that the method of installing the electrical conduit and digging the poles is unlikely to yield any archaeological resources, and staff does not recommend the HPC require archaeological investigations. We consulted with Dr. Brian Crane, who is our archaeologist on staff in historic preservation, and he talked about, you know, the depth of the soil that needs to be disturbed to dig the conduits that are going to attach to the hay barn next door are so shallow. We're talking 8 to 12 inches in area that has been plowed fields for many, many decades, that even if there were archaeological resources, they are most likely not going to be disturbed at that, you know, shallow level within the soil. Staff does note that the proposed electrical work does require a permit and an inspection from the Department of Permitting Services, and so the applicant staff has reminded the applicant to follow up with DPS about his required permits. And then for the fencing, staff finds that the proposed paddock fence will match other fencing enclosing the property and will not detract from the character of this rural master plan site. Additionally, staff finds that this is the second HOP within as many months where the applicant has begun work before receiving the HPC's approval. Staff finds that the proposed work is consistent with 24A8B2 and standards 2, 9, and 10. However, staff recommends that the HPC add a condition to the approval of this HOP that the approval documents for the current HOP not be released until the condition for the previous HOP has been satisfied. To remind the board, the previous HOP was for the after-the-fact installation of a shed in the rear yard, where the HPC conditioned that approval upon changing the siding that had been installed. So once staff has been able to verify that that condition of approval has been met, that the siding has been changed, and the HOP for the shed has been released, then staff will, we would ask that the condition be adopted, that then we would release the HOP for this proposal that we have here tonight. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? Commissioner Doman?
Do you know the status of the shed? Has the siding in fact been done, or maybe that's something that the homeowner can address?
I do not know, but the owner is here tonight.
I'll ask him.
Any other questions for staff? If not, I would ask the owner, I believe the owner, Richard Miller, to come forward. And if you could turn on the microphone and give us your name. You will have, if you would like, 7 minutes to do a presentation, or if you'd prefer just to answer questions, that's fine as well.
Okay, thank you. Richard Miller, 19,000 Moncaster, Durwood, Maryland. Thank you for taking the time to have me testify tonight. I heard you earlier talking about somebody getting a parking ticket, so I'm going to be short and brief because I might not have given myself enough time to get back and avoid one of those. Again, this one, I apologize for the fact that it's retroactive. I think I testified 6 weeks ago when I saw you last that when we initially bought the property, we were under the impression that it was strictly the house and the log cabin that had any kind of formal historic restrictions, that we didn't need to go through a HALT process for electrical or the roof on the barn or whatever other projects, the shed. Anyway, as soon as we realized that we needed the HALT approval, we stopped the work on this project, so that's why the poles are in the ground, but no electrical has been dug, no lights have been hung. So we're here to hopefully get your approval to finish with the process. In terms of the report, I have no testimony to provide other than, I'm fully on board with the proposal. In terms of the status of the shed, the wood siding showed up yesterday, actually, and work will begin as soon as weather permits and schedule permits. So I fully intend on getting that completed here, hopefully within the next 30 days or less if possible. And that's it.
Any questions for Mr. Miller? Mr. Doman?
I just want to thank you again for coming in. And unfortunately, this is a retroactive appearance for the commission. And I'm glad to hear that you're moving ahead on this shed project. It's kind of an unnecessary evil, but I understand that you have to do this, and you're moving ahead, and you've accepted it. And I think that's the only hang-up for you to move ahead with the lights then. Once you address the shed, then the stipulation in the help is that then when that's taken care of, then you can move ahead.
Correct.
And I support it as that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Galway?
This is Commissioner Galway. Just one question. I think you mentioned the 6 25-foot poles. There are no intention of adding any additional poles, that those are the ones?
No, the poles, again, to maintain the visual integrity of the property and the curb appeal, we wanted to spread them as wide as we could to the corners of the ring to sort of blend in with the tree canopy, and then just the set in the middle there of the ring. Lumen-wise, I think we're going to be fine. The lumen recommendation for an outdoor riding ring is I forget what it was, 30 lumen per 100 square feet or something. Anyway, we might be a little light. I might have to come back to you to say, hey, can we add 2 on the center pole to turn one 45 degrees to the right side of the ring and one 45 degrees to the left to make 8 total lights. But again, my goal with this is our goal is to be as minimalistic as possible and, not have additional lights hanging off if we don't have to, so.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, if not, thank you very much. Any deliberation or motion? Anyone? Okay. I would welcome a motion.
This is Commissioner Burdett. I make the motion that we approve HOP number 1048102, retroactive at 19,000 Muncaster Road, Durwood, at his master plan site, the Ridge number 22-/15, that we adopt the rationale stated in the staff report with the conditions from the staff.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Commissioner Doman, I'll second that.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Thank you for coming forward, coming to us tonight. The next project is a preliminary consultation, item number 2A at 7113 Sycamore Avenue in Tacoma Park. And is there a staff report?
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Good evening. John Liebertz, Cultural Resource Planner for the record. The property before you tonight is 7113 Sycamore Avenue in the Tacoma Park Historic District. For some background information, the Craftsman-inspired bungalow was constructed between 1915 and 1922. The building is a contributing resource, and the standards of review are Chapter 24A, the Tacoma Park Guidelines, and the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. Here is a aerial image of the house showing the subject property and roof forms. And here is just some contact information for you all. So the Sanborn Fire Insurance maps, outlined in red in the top right corner, document the original one-story porch on the rear of the house. The former property owner has enclosed that porch at an unknown date. In 1992, the Historic Preservation Commission approved a HOP for the demolition of that enclosed rear porch and construction of the extant one-story shed roof rear addition, the sunroom section. The addition continues the architectural details of the main house. So for tonight, the applicant is proposing to raise the ridge of the side gable roof approximately 34 inches, to construct a second-story addition on the rear slope of the historic house, to replace the asphalt shingle roofs on the front half of the historic house, to extend the existing chimney here, and to replace the upper gable end windows on the side elevations of the original house here and here. Here are just some more drawings. We have the front of the house here. You can see the extension of that chimney and the extension of the roof. The original roof went to here, was the original ridge, and they're raising it to here. And here on the back, you can see the design of the new addition above the existing sunroom addition here. Here is a side elevation, again showing that extension of the chimney. And you can see that the design of this is meant to replicate the look of a shed dormer on the rear of the house. And this is just a design from the other side. In terms of precedent cases, there are 3 precedent cases within the Tacoma Park Historic District that all utilize the same guidance from the Tacoma Park Design Guidelines that states that second-story additions or expansions should be generally consistent with the predominant architectural style and period of the resource. And it says, although structures that have been historically single-story can be expanded, they should be appropriate to the surrounding streetscape in terms of scale and massing. So in terms of similar cases, you have the top 2 here at 42 Columbia Avenue and 7421 Maple Avenue. You can see both of these have side gable roofs where they've extended that roof line further up, but they've kept the original roof form, so you can still see the original form of the house with the extension of the front slope. One of the things I think that hurt some of these in terms of their overall design compatibility was the dormer type they had here, but with really more of the front projection than the shed roof dormers, I think this is more successful. During that same period, there were other treatments that the Historic Preservation Commission approved for these similar type of houses. On the bottom, we have 510 New York Avenue. So instead of retaining that original roof form and extending the roof further, they basically just extended the roof and obliterated the original roof form to create this new massing for the house. So it still reads as a single side gable home. It kind of presents a false sense of development for that individual resource, though. So beyond just talking about and examining the proposed concept, there is one option within the application. The house originally, the sunroom, this original roof rake was like this in terms of its design. In the application, it was partially demolished, pretty much to make way for this window. When I discussed it with the applicant, they presented both options. But they said in all likelihood it would have to be the option that they, due to that location of the window, that the roof wouldn't fit. Since these are non-historic components of the building and on the rear with no visibility, staff thinks either option is compatible with the individual resource in the historic district. So overall, for staff's findings, that the raising of the roof in the addition is consistent with the applicable guidelines and compatibility with the historic house. Staff finds that the scale and massing of the addition would not adversely affect the surrounding historic district. Staff finds that the 5-foot extension of the chimney to be consistent with the applicable guidelines and compatible with the streetscape. In terms of design and materials, staff finds that the design and materials of the new addition to be consistent, again, with the guidelines. As stipulated by the guidelines, the proposed design continues the architectural style of the house. However, the addition is differentiated by its use of cedar shingle siding. Staff requests additional detailed drawings for the treatment of the ridge. So on the rear slope of that side gable roof, it's going to be a standing seam metal. And so we just like to see a detail about how that's going to interact with the front asphalt shingle. And when they submit for a hop, that all specification sheets for the siding, the roof, and windows are included with future applications. Lastly, for the window replacement in the upper gable end, staff finds the replacement of these awning windows to be compatible with the applicable guidelines. The windows are presently located in unoccupiable space, and the replacement with an aluminum-clad wood window of similar dimensions and design would have a negligible adverse effect to the resource in the surrounding district. So staff's requesting HPC feedback on the overall design, concept, and form, and if there's any opinions about the different options for the demolition of the sunroom roof rake or its retention. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? Commissioner Galway?
This is Commissioner Galway. I missed something when it came to the roof. You mentioned the asphalt replacement, and I assume it's existing asphalt. And then, just as a subsequent point to this, you mentioned the standing seam.
Sure.
Which is which, and where is it?
So on the front elevation, this entire asphalt shingle roof would be replaced with asphalt shingle. Pretty much, I think, also just for consistency, so you wouldn't see a seam between the old asphalt and the new. But on this rear, shed dormer they're creating with the rear addition, the applicant says due to the pitch that they are proposing to put a standing seam metal. So if you look at it from the side elevation, this side would have the asphalt, and this side would have the standing seam metal.
Okay. And were the roofs in this area traditionally asphalt when they were first built? Would you know that?
The Sanborn map, I just think, indicates that this was an asphalt roof to begin with. And, it's hard to see from this very grainy historic photograph, but I believe this would have been asphalt.
Yeah, thanks.
I believe Commissioner Doman had a question.
Yes, this is Commissioner Doman. Maybe I didn't see it, but how much is the roof being raised from the existing ridge line to what the new ridge line will be? What is it, 3 feet or something in that ballpark?
We have approximately 34 inches, but I believe either the homeowner or the architect are here tonight, and I'm sure they can answer additional questions.
Okay, that's what it
about
looks
the-
like. And do you have, or has the applicant given you a streetscape so that you can look at, since the roof is going up, how does this compare with the neighbor and houses, to the right and to the left of it? How does the raised roof look from a streetscape?
The applicant has not submitted a streetscape analysis for the house at this time. It's something the HPC could request if they want to see more information about that, and staff could always look into that as well. But there's houses at different heights within that block, so.
And I did not drive by, but is it on a hill? Is it dropping down, or is it pretty much a level street through here?
Well, you can see this aerial probably provides the best, streetscape. You have a one-story house on this side, and it's flanked by a two-story home on this side, and you can see another two-story home here. I think it's slightly, the grade rises slightly when looking at it. You can see the porch is raised off the ground, but.
Okay. I would like to see a streetscape eventually. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, thank you. I would now welcome, I have 2 names here. I'm not sure which one is here. Francis Burwell, Benjamin Norkin. Thank you. If you could state your name for the record, you'll have, if you'd like, 7 minutes for a presentation, or if you'd prefer just answering questions, that's fine too. But you will have 7 minutes if you choose. And if you could give your name, state your name, that'd be great too. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm Ben Norkin, the architect of the project, agent's owner, or owner's agent, here to talk about this project. Thank you for the staff report. I guess I'll add a couple points just to talk about some of the decisions we made. First, do you have the 3D views, like the street level 3D views in here?
I don't believe so, but
Okay,
I can take a pull those up.
We'll make sure you have that for the hop. The house actually is a significant height above grade. It's maybe 10 feet or so from the first floor to where I think the street is. And so the reason we're creating this space, the owner, this is actually just a 1-bedroom house. It's got one bedroom on the first floor, maybe a little den that could technically be a bedroom, but it just has one bedroom, a semi-finished basement, and then the current uninhabitable attic with 2x4 roof framing. We talked about doing a rear addition, but we didn't want to, one, encroach on the backyard, which is well landscaped, has a nice garden, and also any rear addition would significantly reduce the natural light coming into this rear sunroom here with those two skylights and then the kitchen that's just further into the house. So we thought that while we're doing the roof repairs or the roof reinforcement, that's the place where we could create the, the additional bedroom, the additional habitable space. So we realized that we were gonna have to raise the ridge of it, and I tried to minimize that in two ways. One, the rear wall, the plate height is only 7 feet right there. So with all those windows, it's at 7 feet, but it's gonna be a cathedral ceiling, so it's gonna, the height of that room will raise as it goes towards the front of the house. And then doing a metal roof on the rear allowed me a lower slope, which also helped reduce the ridge height as opposed to making that, a 3 or 4 and 12 slope that I'd need for asphalt shingle roof, which would raise the ridge height even more. So the plate height and the metal roof allowed us to not have as significant of a ridge height raise without those two decisions, and in turn also didn't require us to raise the chimney as much because that has to get, a certain height above, any finished surface. I think those are the only points that were not made in the staff report, so I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Norkin? Commissioner Pelletier?
Thank you. What's the issue with raising the ridge higher? Are you just sort of assuming that we would want it lower?
Yes,
Okay.
we'll go, Fran is happy the way it is. We don't need to build more than we need to build. If we could get a little bit more, I'd probably prefer to do asphalt shingle roof all around and not figure out that detail.
Yeah, that was really my question is, did you look at raising the ridge high enough that you could match the slope on the back part so that everything has the same slope? I think that's one of the things in the examples that are in the staff report. All of those extra roof pieces that are coming up and coming back down, they all have the same slope of the existing house.
That was, I think, even too high for my taste, and I can send staff a view of what that would look like, but that would more than double. So right now, the rear, as shown, is 2.5, and the existing is about 5 3/4. So if I doubled that slope, we'd be going up another 2 or 3 feet, I think, from what we're showing right now.
Yeah, but is that so terrible? I guess I don't understand the need to keep the ridge low when you're going to end up with kind of wonky roofs and different types of roof types and everything in the back. I'm just questioning your concern about the height of the ridge. That's
Okay.
all.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Norkin? Commissioner Burdett?
Going back to the roof, so the standing seam is because the pitch is so low that it won't drain properly with an asphalt, or it doesn't meet code.
Correct. I think asphalt is typically not recommended or certified or warranted under 3 and 12 slope.
So I guess I'm a little curious about what the detail's gonna look like at the ridge line.
It would probably be, it's going to be a conditioned attic, so there's no ridge vent. Any piece up there is strictly just for guarding that seam against water. So it'd probably be a metal, whatever the metal is. If it's going to be steel, it's probably going to be a steel ridge cap.
Okay, along the whole length. You said the roof framing's 2x4. I'm familiar with that condition. I have a house with the same problem. So are you scissoring up the existing?
Yeah, so you can,
rafters?
if the section is in the drawings, you know, we haven't had a structural engineer yet, so I've drawn my interpretation of what I think is gonna happen, but the roof at the front is all gonna be sistered with new 2x12s with a giant ridge beam running the length of the house, and then the rear is gonna be 2x12s as well.
So you're getting your occupiable height at the back of the house, and the front of the house is just low storage. Pretty
It's
much.
gonna be, yeah, we're getting, basically, do you guys have the floor plan?
All the sections and floor plans are in the application package in your briefing book, so you can pull those all up on your.
It's
Yeah.
page 63
Yeah.
for.
But basically, from where the ridge is right now, because the floor is gonna come up, the new floor is gonna come up, because we've got to increase the joist size of the floor joist. We're also increasing the depth of the roof rafters. So where the ridge is right now, the finished height is gonna be about 80 inches. And then decreases pretty quickly towards the front of the house. So that right now is sort of finished storage in the plan, that's finished storage, and all the habitable space is to the rear, which includes a new bathroom and one long bedroom, reading room kind of area.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. So, yeah, I don't recall, have you been before us in the past?
A couple times, you guys
Okay.
always like me.
Okay. Well, so you know that this is one of the services that we provide to try to give you what we think will be a project that we can approve with a HOP later on. And so with that, I'd like to have deliberations, what we think about your proposal, and if we think it's okay or not okay, and what we would recommend to you. Anyone like to kick it off? Commissioner Doman.
Yes, this is Commissioner Doman. I think you've addressed most of the concerns with the staff. I think the staff report pretty much covered everything, and I think you followed recommendations, and I think if you've been here before, I don't know if I remember you or not, but I think you know what to expect when you come in here, and and to be able to work with the staff. I think you've done that. I think you've done a good job. I have no problem with it. I would like to see a streetscape to see how this looks relative to the other houses on the block, because you said this sticks up pretty high anyway. The first floor is maybe 10 feet above the road is what you said. So this is going to make this look really tall, but then again, I can't tell because I have not actually been down the street to look at the houses or anything. What else was I going to say? Anyway, you gave two options, but I think you pretty much eliminated one of the options because of interference with the window. So I think you pretty much resolved that issue. You came with option A and option B, and one of them was kind of eliminated already, I think. So I think that's been taken care of. So other than that, I have no other problems with this.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Galway.
This is Commissioner Galway. In general, I could certainly accept your design. I think that it's from the overhead and the roof, raising the roof, I don't see that creating a very large volume of space or a large building that would be overpowering compared to the other. So I think the massing seems to be okay. I guess if I had one quirky thing is your metal standing seam roof on the backside because of the low pitch and low slope of that roof. That's very awkward to me. And if you said the one, it was 2.5 and over 12 right now, and if in fact, and I'd have to check, but if the asphalt minimum is 3 and 12, maybe you cantilever, if you're stuck with the ridge beam being where it is, maybe you extend the cantilever up past it a little bit. I don't know if we're talking another 4 inches or 6 inches in height, but it seemed like, man, just to get it up high enough, I wouldn't want to go up and double the pitch. I think that would be too much and make the height, like you said, 2 feet or so higher. I think that might start to get really wonky in terms of the massing, but if you could push it up maybe 4, 6, or 8 inches to get that extra slope on the downside and on the backside, and then use asphalt, I think to me that just seems to be maybe a better approach. Something I think you should look at. But in all, I like it, and I think I could approve it certainly. Thanks.
Anyone else? Commissioner Radu?
Well, I actually agree with the earlier comment Commissioner Pelletier had about like the slope of the roof. When I look at your rendering and the package we were provided, it really bothers me that the slopes are so different, and that you treat what's beyond the historic roof and house exactly the same. I mean, exactly the same. I mean, with the brackets and everything, but also because it seemed to me that almost like the intent would be to like pretend that this is a shed dormer at the back. Usually the dormers don't have sides on the windows on the sides, and it bothers me, that window too, that is very close. I mean, in this type of bungalows, very rarely the windows are like so close to the corner. So I think that's kind of my main issue with this. And I didn't even think that the twin, I mean, is it really like code compliant, this 2.5 for a it's a special construction for the standing seam roof? I know even for the flat, even when you solder a roof, it's like still like minimum 3 inches. So I'm just curious. Is it like warranty? I mean, like the manufacturer provides warranty for 2.5 inches on 12 slope?
For a metal roof? Yeah, I guess the other option would be TPO, but that's not really, I think, viable in this situation.
Okay, well, I mean, I already said, I think I would like to see that roof coming closer to if not exactly parallel to the original roof, closer to it, and not to have a window on the side, or have a different type of window.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Pelletier?
I know I already stated my concerns, but I drew this out while I was at work, just to see where the pitch, like if you mirrored the pitch on the back, and it looks like it might be another 2 feet, maybe 18 inches or something high. But I think I agree with Commissioner Radu about if you're going to keep the roof that pitch, I feel like the dormer has to be separate somehow. Like you're starting to do it with is that stucco on the side of it? Like what?
It's going to be
shingle.
It's going to be cedar
Cedar shingle.
or shake, but yeah,
Okay,
cedar. Yeah.
so yeah, so it has a different cladding on it. I think the brackets aren't appropriate if it's a totally different kind of architectural feel. I agree about the window because I like your second option on the existing roof, the one that turns the corner and goes back up. Is it the first? No, the one on the left there. I think that somehow that seems more appropriate than the other one. Looks truncated somehow. And I don't know if you haven't talked to a structural engineer, I don't know if you're going to get away with turning both of those corners with windows, because you're probably going to have some kind of stiffener at the corner. I don't know. But I'm not crazy about the windows on the sides, but I would nix the brackets. I would maybe bring in the overhangs if you don't need such big overhangs on because everything's inset, right, on the back. I'm just trying to make this feel more like a shed dormer, because it seems to be suffering an identity crisis between, is it part of the house or is it something new? And if you don't want to change the pitch on the roof, then I think the whole thing just needs to be detailed a little bit differently. Nix the brackets, bring in the overhang, so that it does feel more like an addition. So I can show you my little sketches later if you want to see them. But that would be my suggestion. Because like I said, I think the ones that were shown that were examples, the pitch of the roof was the same, and it blended a lot better into the existing house. So that would be my recommendation. Thank you.
Commissioner Burdett?
I feel for this owner. Like I said, my house is almost identical to this, and I know exactly how difficult this is. But we've looked at another project sometime in the last few years where they actually just raised the roof up whatever they wanted to get that second floor. And I wasn't real crazy about that when that came through because it really did change the appearance of the house. So with your option and that option, I would still go with yours. But I do have to agree with Commissioner Pelletier that I want to see that back room pulled in on the sides a little bit so it looks a little bit more like a shed dormer than just this pushing back up and over. And I am really curious about how that detail is going to look with between the standing seam flipping over into the asphalt. That just is going to sound interesting. But all in all, I actually don't have a lot of problem with this. And I think the side windows are going to be wonderful light coming through that, even if the property isn't that well wooded. But if there's something that can be done about those windows, I'm not sure they have to be exactly the same size as the others. But again, that's neither here nor there. But again, a little tweaking, and when this comes through, I could support this hop. I think you've done what you can do with a house with an attic this small, and good luck with the rafter framing and the floor framing. Ugh.
Anyone else? Commissioner Nasser, I don't want to leave you out if you want to add something.
No, I think this is Commissioner Nasser. I think I agree with Commissioner Burdett and Commissioner Galloway. In general, I support the project. I don't have any problem with the massing. The side windows, looking at the plan, maybe you can just have some kind of smaller windows that are raised a little bit to get the light, but get the dormer feeling to this addition. But in general, and of course, I also really like to see the detail of the two roofs meeting. In general, I think this is very appropriate, the height and the mass. I support it.
Thank you. And I actually like it. I think it would fit in well with the neighborhood, number one. I think looking at I haven't been there recently, but I think it looks like several the buildings or the houses on the block are larger, quite a bit larger. This is very, very small compared to the rest of the house, and I think it fit in well. I think part of what I'm looking at, if someone has to live in a one-bedroom house, that's tough. And I think definitely need to have more space, and I think this is a very appropriate way to develop the space. So I think I would support it. I would consider the other issues that have been raised, but I would generally very, very strongly support this project. So thank you. Anyone else? Does that help? I hope that is helpful to you.
It was helpful.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. What's that? Yes, yeah, I'm coming. The next item on our agenda are minutes from October 25th and November 15th. You have a chance to look at the minutes and like to make a motion?
This is Commissioner Burdett. I did actually read the minutes.
Good
and I would
heavens.
like to make a motion that we approve the minutes from October 25th,
Well-
but
This is Chair Sutton. I read them as well, and I will second your motion.
Okay.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Any commission items? Any staff items?
No staff items.
Thank you. With that, our meeting is adjourned.